The echo of footsteps on polished concrete rang louder than it should have. Claire's suitcase dragged behind her, the broken wheel flapping uselessly as she rushed through Terminal 2 of LAX. Her hair stuck to her face, damp from the sweat of near panic. Her flight to New York was boarding in 20 minutes, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was the phone call. "You don't get to rewrite history just because you read a book, Claire," her mother had yelled. "Success doesn't come from vision boards and mantras. It comes from not quitting halfway through college." Claire had stood frozen by the restroom entrance, her boarding pass trembling in her hand. "I didn't quit, I transferred and I graduated, you just never asked." Click. She was still shaking when she slumped onto a bench outside Gate 37B. Around her, people buzzed, laughter, calls, rushing feet, but she felt like she was underwater, struggling to breathe. She opened her carry-on and pulled out the book that had changed everything. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Its corners were worn from use, dog-eared pages marked with highlighters and scribbles. She clutched it like a lifeline. 6 months ago, Claire had been waiting tables, drowning in debt, and ashamed to tell anyone that she hadn't made it after moving to Los Angeles. Then she found an old podcast, an interview with a woman who claimed the law of attraction had pulled her out of bankruptcy and into a 7-figure business. The woman had mentioned Hill's book. Claire had downloaded it that night and finished it by morning. It wasn't magic, it was focus, desire, faith, autosuggestion, persistence. Each chapter had cut through the noise in her life like a sharp blade. Not because it was easy to believe, but because for once it gave her a framework. Not a hope, but a method. So she started using it, visualizing daily, writing affirmations every morning, acting like the version of herself who already had her dreams. And things started happening. First, a chance meeting with an investor at a free workshop in Venice Beach. Then, a pitch that landed better than she expected. Then, today, a speaking opportunity at a youth summit in New York. Her first time being invited as a voice of motivation, not just a desperate applicant. But one call from her mother had yanked her back. Her throat burned with the old familiar sting of doubt. What if they were right? What if she was chasing wind? Claire Rivers? She looked up. A young gate agent stood there, eyes scanning the crowd. Final call for boarding. Claire stood slowly, heart pounding. She slipped the book into her bag, zipped it shut, and walked toward the gate. "I'm Claire." As the gate beeped and the agent waved her through, Claire whispered something only she could hear. "I'm going to prove it works." The yellow cab bounced through potholes as it weaved up 10th Avenue. Claire sat pressed against the window, watching the skyline blur past. Her fingers gripped the edge of her leather journal, resting on her lap like a sacred object. She'd written in it every day for 6 months, her goals, affirmations, and detailed visions of the life she was building. Not hoping, declaring. Napoleon Hill said clarity of purpose was non-negotiable, so she'd made it her ritual. "I am a speaker. I inspire people with my story. I earn money doing what I love." Now, New York wasn't just a dream. It was real. The driver grunted something in thick accent, pointing at a tall brick building with green awnings. Claire leaned forward. "Yes, here's perfect, thank you." She paid in cash and stepped out into the brisk November air. It smelled like roasted peanuts, diesel fumes, and cold ambition. A typical Manhattan mix. Inside the lobby, a poster on an easel confirmed it. Youth Impact Summit, empowering the next generation. Claire's name was listed under guest speakers. Her stomach flipped. "You're Claire Rivers, right?" a voice said behind her. She turned to see a woman in her early 40s, dark red blazer, clipboard in hand. "I'm Marcy, we spoke over email." Claire smiled, grateful for the familiar name. "Thank you for having me, really." Marcy nodded, brisk and efficient. "You're on at 2:45, we'll mic you up at 2:30, 10-minute slot. You brought a presentation?" "Just myself." Marcy looked surprised, then intrigued. "Confident. I like it. Green rooms that way. Coffee and fruit." Claire thanked her and walked down the hall, heels echoing against polished tiles. Her nerves buzzed. She pulled out her journal and sat on a velvet couch, flipping to her most recent entry. Today I will speak truth into a room full of young minds. They will feel it. They will believe they can change. A memory surfaced. High school, age 16. She had stood in front of a class giving a book report, her voice trembling, face flushed, praying for invisibility. She had never been the speaker. She'd been the girl who blended in, the one who left her hometown without goodbye because she couldn't explain what she wanted. And now, here she was, doing it. Her phone buzzed. Mom, hope New York makes you realize what real work looks like. Maybe then you'll come home and stop embarrassing yourself. Claire read it twice. No good luck, no curiosity, just that. She didn't respond. Instead, she opened her journal, flipped to the back and scribbled something new. I do not need permission to believe in myself. She capped the pen, stood up, and walked toward the stage. The stage lights were blinding. Claire stood center stage, mic clipped to her collar, the hum of whispers fading as the moderator stepped aside. Rows of teenagers sat before her, some scrolling their phones, others slouched in their seats. They weren't expecting much. Maybe a pep talk, maybe another recycled success story. She took a breath, not to calm herself, but to ground herself. Napoleon Hill called it emotion-backed belief. She didn't need to impress. She needed to connect. My name is Claire Rivers, she began, voice clear. And I used to think success belonged to people with the right last names. A few students looked up. I thought it meant degrees from the right schools, perfect resumes, family money. I didn't have any of those. Her words found the rhythm she'd rehearsed not in front of mirrors, but on long walks, whispering them to the air until they felt like truth in her bones. I was broke. Living in a tiny apartment in LA, working nights and pretending I was okay. Then one day I heard a podcast. The woman said something that changed everything. Your life is responding to your thoughts, even when you're not aware of them. More heads lifted. I thought it was nonsense, but I was desperate enough to try. I found a book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and I committed. Every day I wrote down what I wanted. I visualized the version of myself who had already made it, and I made decisions based on her, not who I was at the time. A boy in the third row sat forward. A girl in the back lowered her phone. I didn't magically become rich, but I changed. I stopped asking for permission. I stopped waiting. And the world responded. She paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough. I'm here today because someone gave me a chance to speak, because I wrote that exact vision in my journal 6 months ago. I said, I speak on stages. I help people believe again. She smiled, small, genuine. I want you to understand something. The world doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you're ready to believe you deserve. A soft clap started from the side, then grew. It wasn't thunderous. It didn't need to be. It was real. As she stepped off stage, her heart pounding, she realized something strange. She wasn't relieved that it was over. She wanted more. Marcy met her in the wings, eyebrows raised. 10 minutes? That was the most engaged I've seen them all day. Claire laughed, half in disbelief. You think so? I know so. I want to talk to you after this. Claire nodded, still catching her breath, still holding that feeling close. Something had shifted. She had proof now. The crowd buzzed behind her as the next speaker took the stage, but Claire barely heard it. Her adrenaline hadn't worn off. It had transformed into something steadier. Purpose. She sat in the hallway, sipping lukewarm coffee, eyes unfocused, journal in her lap again. You were the one talking about the journal, right? Claire looked up. A tall man in a grey coat stood near the coffee table, curly hair damp from the cold. He looked mid-30s, polished but approachable. I was, she said, cautious but curious. He extended a hand. I'm Anthony King. I mentor at a few startup incubators, youth development mostly. That line about the world giving you what you believe you deserve, that hit. Claire shook his hand. Thank you. I didn't think anyone would really get that, Anthony smiled. Most people don't, but the ones who do, you can spot them. He handed her a card. Matter black, simple font, his name, a logo, and a contact number. I'd like to connect you with a group I work with, young women mostly. They need stories like yours, not fairy tales, real ones. Claire blinked. I've never mentored anyone. That's what makes you perfect. He nodded once, then disappeared down the hallway, coat flapping behind him. She stared at the card. The old version of herself, the one waiting tables, hiding from her bank notifications, would have laughed at the absurdity of this moment. But that version had been dying a slow death the day Claire picked up Hill's book. She put the card in her wallet and stood. She needed air. Outside, Manhattan was grey and buzzing. Taxis honked. A food vendor yelled something in Spanish. Claire pulled her coat tighter and walked without direction, mind spinning. At a red light, her phone buzzed again. Dad. Heard you're in NY. Mom's worried. You okay? Claire exhaled sharply. Her dad rarely texted. Her parents hadn't lived in the same house since she was 13, but his silence had always spoken louder than words. She typed slowly. Claire, I'm okay. I just gave a speech. It went well. Dad, good. Maybe she'll see it eventually. Don't let her pull you off your path. Claire stopped walking. This man, who barely spoke, was rooting for her. She typed again. Claire, thanks, Dad. That means more than you know. As she stood on the corner of 43rd and 9th, surrounded by strangers and steam rising from the subway grate, Claire realized something deeper. Her journey wasn't just about proving the law of attraction worked. It was about shedding the belief that she was powerless, that she needed validation from people who never understood her. She wasn't chasing dreams anymore. She was walking inside them. And now, she had somewhere new to go. Back in her hotel room, Claire sat cross-legged on the stiff duvet, city lights flickering beyond the window. Her journal lay open beside her, blank page waiting. She should have been exhausted, but her thoughts were sprinting. She'd met with Anthony over coffee just hours earlier. His offer? A 3-week pilot program with underprivileged teens in Newark. Group sessions, mindset coaching, speaking. He said he could pay her not much but enough to cover the basics. The catch? It started in 10 days. Say yes, he told her. You're already doing the work. This would just give it a name. She had nodded, overwhelmed but intrigued. Now, alone, the decision loomed. Rent in LA was due soon. Her barista job had cut her hours after she started prioritizing speaking gigs. She was floating between belief and reality, like stepping across a bridge that wasn't fully built. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Sophie, her roommate back in LA. Sophie, rent's gonna be tight next month. You okay? Need me to cover and you Venmo later? Claire stared at the screen. Sophie had always had her back, but Claire hated feeling like a burden. That wasn't the version of herself she was trying to become. She didn't reply yet. Instead, she opened her journal. She drew a line down the middle of the page. Left side, what happens if I stay comfortable? Right side, what happens if I jump? Under the left, she wrote, wait tables again, watch opportunities pass, slowly lose belief in this process. Under the right, impact real lives, build a story worth telling, become the woman I keep writing about. She capped the pen. The choice was obvious. It always had been. She grabbed her phone and called Anthony. Hey, it's Claire, I'm in. He didn't sound surprised. I had a feeling. When the call ended, Claire looked at herself in the mirror across the room. Her reflection wasn't the glossy, polished speaker she once thought she needed to become. She saw a woman who was tired, terrified, uncertain, and still moving forward. She picked up the journal again and wrote one more sentence, bold and centered. I do not need permission to live the life I imagine. Then she picked up her phone and finally replied to Sophie, Claire, no need to cover me. I'll figure it out. Big things are coming, Sophie replied a second later. Sophie, I believe it, proud of you. Claire smiled, a tear catching at the corner of her eye. This wasn't the end of the journey. It was the first chapter of a different kind of success, the kind no one could measure with likes, money, or followers. She was no longer waiting for a breakthrough. She was the breakthrough. 2 weeks later, Claire stood in front of 12 teenagers in a worn-down community center in Newark, New Jersey. The fluorescent lights flickered. The heat creaked through old pipes. The walls smelled like dust and floor wax. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. The students slouched in plastic chairs, arms folded, skeptical eyes scanning her. One girl wore headphones. A boy at the back whispered something that made the others snicker. Claire smiled, not nervously but knowingly. She remembered being them. "My name is Claire. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a celebrity. I don't have some perfect life to sell you," she began, pacing slowly. "But I've learned one thing that changed my world. You become what you believe you deserve." No one clapped. No one nodded. But no one looked away. Most people are stuck because they think life happens to them. But what if it's the other way around? What if life is reacting to you, your thoughts, your energy, your decisions? She pulled a folded page from her pocket. "This is from my journal 6 months ago. I wrote, I speak to young people. I help them see themselves differently." She paused. "I wrote it before anyone invited me, before I had proof it could happen." A girl in the second row, quiet until now, raised her hand. "How do you know it's real? The whole law of attraction thing, what if you just got lucky?" Claire nodded. "Great question. The truth? I don't know how it works. I just know I stopped waiting for the world to approve of me. And when I started treating my dreams like they were already mine, things began to shift." She glanced around the room, making eye contact with each kid. "It's not magic. It's alignment. It's choosing thoughts that make you stronger, not smaller." For the first time, the room felt still. After the session, the same girl approached her. "I wrote something today," she said, handing Claire a scrap of notebook paper. "It's dumb, but you said to try." Claire unfolded it. Claire scrawled in uneven letters, "I believe I am more than what I've survived." Claire looked up, heart full. "This isn't dumb. This is power." As the girl walked away, Claire tucked the paper into her journal like a sacred page. She understood something then. Her dream wasn't just about proving something to her parents, or proving that Hill's book was right. It was about planting seeds. Seeds that didn't ask for permission to grow. That pushed through concrete. That bloomed in places no one thought possible. Later that night in her motel room, Claire flipped to a fresh journal page and wrote, "I am a catalyst. I am a mirror. I remind people of who they already are." Then she closed the book. Tomorrow was another room, another voice to reach, and she was ready. 3 months later, Claire stood backstage at a sleek conference center in Austin, Texas. Rows of chairs stretched across the ballroom, filled with college students, young professionals, and dreamers like she used to be. A tech crew adjusted her mic. Her heart was steady. This wasn't her biggest crowd, but it was the first time her parents were in the audience. She'd sent the invitation without expectation. Her mother hadn't replied. Her father just wrote, "We'll see." And yet, when she peeked through the curtain earlier, she'd seen them both. Not sitting together, but there. Her mother clutched a program. Her father stared straight ahead, hands folded. Claire didn't feel like proving anything anymore. This was her truth, with or without their applause. The host called her name. The lights shifted. Claire stepped out into the warmth of the spotlight. Not to impress, not to defend, but to serve. "My name is Claire Rivers," she began, smiling gently. "And 3 years ago, I was waiting tables, broke, invisible, and quietly giving up. Not because I lacked talent, but because I lacked belief." She paused. "And then I stopped waiting for someone to validate me. I started acting like the version of myself I wanted to become. That's what changed everything." In the second row, her mother wiped a tear. Her father looked down, then back up, eyes glassy but proud. Claire continued, "You don't need a perfect plan to begin. You just need to begin with the belief that you matter." The room was silent, hanging on every word. She didn't just tell them how the law of attraction worked. She showed them what it looked like alive.